Hi everyone. As you guys know, we are going to be working on writing our own personal narratives. And in this video, I'm going to explain what I want you to include in the introduction of your personal narrative. Okay, so just a reminder, what are personal narratives? Personal narratives are true stories about memorable events from the writer's life. In my example that I already shared with you was my story, Grandpa and the Bear. That was a memorable thing that happened to me, and it was a true story from my own life. Okay, so I want to be specific about what you need to include in your introduction. So at the beginning of your personal narrative, you need to start with something called a lead. That's very important. The purpose is you want to have your first sentence or the very beginning of your story be something very interesting that gets the reader's attention and makes them want to continue reading. If you don't have a good lead, your reader is going to get bored and maybe they won't read your personal narrative. And then, of course, the other things you need to make sure you include in your introduction, you need to explain clearly the setting, so where the story takes place, the characters, who are the important people, and also make sure you explain what the problem is or what the adventure is, if maybe your personal narrative isn't about a problem that happened. Okay, I want to explain clearly what a lead is and the different types of leads that you can use in your stories. You have different options that you can choose from. So I want you to study and know what these different options are, and then choose one to add to your story. So one of the options, there's starting with action, description, dialogue, a sound effect, or a question. And I'll explain these more in detail. So one option you have for your personal narrative is to start off the beginning of your story with action. So this is a lead that gets the reader's attention quickly involved in the story, gets the reader quickly involved in the story by starting with an exciting event or some kind of action. And there's an example there from someone else's story. It could be, I threw on my favorite red dress and scrambled down the stairs as fast as I could. It was my 8th birthday and I couldn't wait for the party to begin. So if you're writing a story about, this is a girl writing about her 8th birthday, that's a way you could start that story with action. Another option, I call it starting with description, and here in this picture it's a snapshot. It's the same thing. So again, this lead is when you begin your story with painting a picture for the reader. So for example, this sample here starts off with lots of description. It says, it's 10 degrees below zero, and the river is frozen a foot thick. It makes snapping sounds like the limbs of a tree cracking. A lone figure glides along the black ice, moving towards the city. The only sound is the scraping of each blade as it bites into the river. That's me doing my favorite sport, ice skating. Okay, so someone was going to write a story about ice skating, a time they went ice skating, so they started off with the description of what everything looked like and sounded like. Another option you can use for your lead is starting with dialogue. Here it's called a talking lead. So dialogue is something I'm gonna explain in more detail starting next week, but it's when you start off with someone talking. So here's an example. Quick, hit the floor, my dad yelled. Whatever you do, don't look up, my mother added as I dropped to the floor and slid myself under my bed. It was a terrifying night for my family when we discovered a bat in our house. Okay, so again, there's some action there, but if you notice, it starts off with dialogue, someone speaking. Okay, another option you have is a sound effect lead. This is when your lead begins with a specific sound to get the reader's attention. This is when you actually write the letters that describe the sound. So if there's an alarm going off, it could be ring, and you could write that however you want, maybe B, R, 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 whatever, use your imagination. It's very similar to action because usually after you start off with the sound effect, you describe what's happening to explain the action. So that's another idea you can use. Another one is you could start off with a question. So you could start off by asking the reader an interesting question at the start of their story. I wanted to go back and give you a sample question that you could start with. So the example there was, how bad could it be? That's what I wondered before My family left for our camping trip, with all 7 of us piled into the car. And then I want to go and explain an example for the sound effect introduction. Okay, so like I said, for the sound effect lead, you start off by describing or spelling out the sound. Smash! The window cracked, the wind howled, and the door flung open. Rain poured in through the screen, drenching the welcome mat inside our house. I will never forget the fierce storm that invaded my house last night. And after you write your lead, you need to make sure you add a few extra things. You want to make sure the reader knows the setting, the characters, and whatever the problem or adventure is. So here's the example of my story from Grandpa and the Bear. This is the beginning, what I consider my introduction. So, the sound of a low, steady growl woke me from my sleep. My eyes shot open as my body froze. Sheltered in my room in the summer cabin my family had rented, I couldn't see what was making the noise. My brain jumped to a sudden conclusion. There was a bear just outside my room, and it wanted to eat me alive. I had heard that there were bears in Maine, where I was on vacation with my grandparents, and I always kept this fact in the back of my mind. Bears were, of course, the scariest creatures on Earth, besides sharks, which I didn't have to worry about in the lake we were staying at. I imagined that such a beast would easily tear down a wall of our cabin in order to devour whoever was inside. One thing I want you to think about here is, what type of lead do you think I chose to use for my story? Okay, so now I'm going to point out how I included all those things. Remember, I said you need to have the lead, you need to tell us where the story takes place, who the characters are, and what the problem is. So pretty much everything that's underlined here in red is my lead. Okay, so again, I want you to think, what type of lead did I choose? Here underlined in the orange, I explain clearly what the setting of the story is. So you know that I'm in my summer cabin in Maine. In green, I have underlined the problem. Okay, the problem was there was a bear outside my room that wanted to eat me. And then finally, in blue, I have underlined the characters. There's myself, my grandparents, and the alleged bear. Okay, so now your turn. Those are the things you need to include in your introduction for your personal narrative. If something's missing, go back and fix it. I gave you 5 options for different types of leads. So choose one of those and change it to fit your story. And make sure the reader knows who the characters are, the setting, and what the problem or the adventure is that your story is going to be about. Okay, that's it. If you want to review this, I'm going to post this video onto my website, and have fun writing. Bye.